And we're back. Ian Hayes, aka Mama G, co-creator, as I always say, along with the prime creator of Fiercely Fulfilled Feminine, where I help twin flames to heal sexual trauma, reclaim their power, and experience true fulfillment through what I call the Sacred Sexuality Reclamation Method. Now, today it has been requested that I speak about attachment styles. What does this have to do with twin flames? It has everything to do with twin flames. Now, first of all, attachment theory was something that was, what's the word, initiated, put together, constructed by two well-known psychologists. One of them was a British psychologist by the name of, I forget the first name, but John Bowlby, it is. And then he had a student by the name of Mary Ainsworth, a Canadian American psychologist, and she did some further observational and situational studies to just be able to further define what these attachment styles were. And basically, the key concept is that infants and humans in general have an innate desire to bond, to attach, to connect, essentially to love and be loved, because it is through relationships where we receive our support. To me, connection, especially with a caregiver, is about a reminder or remembrance of the connection with God and God's source energy. So critically important. In fact, according to these two psychologists and to this theory, it is between the ages of 7 and 11 months of age when an infant begins to develop their attachment and their deep emotional bond to their caregiver or caregivers. So what I'm going to do, basically what I'm going to lay it down here for you, is I am going to share with you the four main identified attachment styles. One of them is a secure, healthy attachment. The other three are insecure attachments. Break those down for you, each of those, how they show up as far as behaviorally, especially what thoughts go into that person's mind, and then what it might have looked like in their childhood. How did their caregivers present? How did their caregivers not give in a caring way, essentially, if you have one of these attachment styles? And then I'm going to share with you how you can begin or continue to heal what is potentially, especially for twin flame, an insecure attachment style, so that you can bring yourself out and align yourself with a healthier, more sustainable ability to connect and to connect more intimately and deeply with not only yourself and others in all of life, with God, yet eventually within physical reunion with your divine counterpart. So, that being said, because curious minds want to know, and you may not know at this point if you're new to my channel, I identify as predominantly divine feminine energy, and I will share what I believe my attachment style has been. I believe that I've healed quite a bit of that. Now, I'm sharing attachment styles. I have done a lot of inner child work. I have learned a lot about attachment style through my programs, through trainings, through coachings, through reading and research. And I actually went to a retreat center a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of information related to attachment styles, among other things. Okay. So that's where I come in. I've also been working with a relationship coach. So here's the deal. I've said it already. We all have a desire to love and be loved. That's just a basic foundational human need. Yet trauma can create energetic blocks and fear around, even though one has the desire, it can create fear and energetic blocks around the ability to really establish healthy closeness and connection in a very loving, sustainable way. So let's identify those attachment styles. Why am I doing this? And because I would like to share how twin flames fit in with this, why trauma bonding, addictions, and relational conflicts are so common with twin flames. And then, of course, I said to offer insight. for that compassion. So let's see. First of all, a secure, healthy attachment style is not something that you as a twin flame were modeled, you were not shown. It's just because of your trauma. So your caregivers, whether they were directly responsible for your trauma or not, in some way showed up in a way that did not offer you a balance that felt secure, safe, loving, and nurturing. So let me back up. I started to talk about what is secure, healthy attachment. Secure essentially is someone with a healthy self-esteem. They're very confident with connection. They're comfortable with intimacy. They are able to regulate their emotions. They have a stabilized nervous system. They're able to engage in open communication. And they tend to have a lot of healthy connections and relationships in every area of their life. Now that's like the little golden egg right there that doesn't happen, well, not too often just yet. We're changing that in our consciousness right now. So let's see what else. Oh, and the reason that someone develops a secure attachment style is because they had caregivers who were just that. They were reliable. They were able to communicate openly. They were able to provide a balance of comfort, reassurance, and the ability to allow you to explore where you felt safe and secure. In other words, they weren't going to let you go too far. They weren't going to let you go to the top of the steps and then dip down at like a year and a half. Okay. They had certain safeguards in place. And at the same time, they were not going to be like overly intrusive or like that helicopter parent. They had a healthy balance of, okay, let's reassure you. Okay. Let's provide you comfort. Let's allow you to share what you're feeling and to express that in a healthy way. And let's provide that sacred space for you. And let's also allow you to be able to explore the world a little bit without feeling frightened, where you're feeling safe and secure. And when that happens, and you come from that foundation of safety is the big word here. When you feel safe to explore the world, when you feel safe to connect, when you are reassured in a healthy, balanced way, that is a secure attachment style. And that's how you bond emotionally with the rest of the world and all of your relationships. Okay, now let's get to the insecure attachment styles, of which these two psychologists identify three main ones. So I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to share with you part of what they share, what I've learned through research, and part of my own insight as to how I believe it can show up, and then why someone may have developed this type of attachment style. Now, with that being said, it's very common to kind of move in between different attachment styles and yet have kind of a dominant attachment style based again on the type of abuse as a child. So let me start with anxious preoccupied. And it might be just called anxious. Anxious preoccupied is essentially somebody who needs constant validation, that they're not secure in their connections, in their relationships. They need constant reassurance. They have an insatiable need for closeness, so they can feel very, very clingy and overwhelming to their partner. They need constant reassurance. In other words, if the moods fluctuate in their partners, they are highly sensitive, and they're usually going to take it personally and think it's something that they did, or maybe they're no longer, the love is no longer there. Like they're always like really, really keeping a hyper vigilant, hypersensitive focus on the relationship, on their partner, and their moods. And they have, like I said, an insatiable desire for intimacy. So it's where sex is associated with love. In other words, if there's not enough sex, this person might say, oh my goodness, do they love me? Because why are we not having sex tonight? Why aren't we having sex 3 times today? Okay, because for them, that means love. That's the way that love is expressed. without truly understanding all the different ways that intimacy can show up well before sex, by the way. So they tend to be very jealous and possessive. In fact, all insecure attachment styles tend to be very jealous and possessive and insecure with their connections and have a certain level of unworthiness. So let me just override that right there, like share that overriding aspect. Back to the anxious, preoccupied, making sure I don't miss anything. They prioritize others' needs over their own. People pleasing, sacrificing aspects of themselves, losing their identity in exchange for love. So this could be like the trophy wife. It could be like the trophy wife. Okay, you all look good, validation. Okay, let me be on my partner's hand, but where's your life? Okay, if this is you. And I would say I definitely have or have experienced or was that anxious, preoccupied. And for me, it was a combination of that and another one, which I'm going to share. And something that I've noticed with anxious, preoccupied is, and again, this is my observation, and you may disagree or not, is that divine feminines on the twin flame journey, or those who identify with predominantly divine feminine energy, tend to be anxious, avoidant. And if this is you, this attachment style is where the person has a very low view of themselves and a higher view of everybody else. Like they're fortunate to be with this person or that person, or like, are they good enough? Are they worthy enough? And so it's truly it's a self-esteem issue across the board. And yet with this attachment style, literally we'll see others as better than themselves. And they often feel disempowered, completely disempowered. And because of this, tend to take part in codependent relationships, very, very dependent on others to get things done, to make things happen in their lives, because they, like I said, they feel powerless with this type of attachment style. Okay. And again, like I said, constant validation. Oh my God, am I pretty enough for you? Do you like this outfit? Should I change? That is anxious, preoccupied. That was me. And here's the number one fear. If you identify or have identified with this attachment style, is the fear of abandonment. And that's why there's the need for the constant validation, the constant checking in the moods. Oh my goodness, is the love still there? Are they going to leave me tomorrow? Am I good enough? Okay, constant reinsurance to a point where it's just overwhelming for the partner. So how did this come about? This came about because caregivers were sporadic, inconsistent as far as their ability to nurture and to love you, if you identify with this attachment style. In fact, you may have been abused by another caregiver, or one, like let's say maybe you were abused by, you had both parents in the house, you were abused by your father, but your mother didn't do anything about it. Or maybe she was just in complete denial, or the other way around. Or maybe it was an extended family member or a neighbor, whatever. When a parent, whether outwardly deny something or just acts as if nothing happened, even though your behaviors show otherwise, that is seen as indifference. So the message that someone with this attachment style receives is, they don't care, I don't matter, I'm not important enough, because why wouldn't they do something about it? So denial is abuse. It's a sense of indifference. And that just doesn't make logical sense to someone with this attachment style, because they're your caregivers. They should be taking care of you. They should be protecting you. And it's not happening, or didn't happen. Okay, so the emotional support is just not there. That's another piece of it, is usually there's a lot of stress within this family situation with the caregivers. And the stress could be due to death. There could be a spouse that died. Okay, I know that was a situation with myself and my two children. There could be a family member that's very ill and not well. There could be a family member that's suddenly hospitalized. Maybe a dad walks out, a mom walks out, they leave, they don't come back. Maybe they do, they don't, but they just leave, and it's very, very sudden. There's that fear. That's the reason for the fear of abandonment and that anxious attachment style. Oh my God, I don't want this to ever end. Something could happen. Like just anxious and fearful constantly about just making sure that this relationship stays. Parents, I mentioned financial stress. That was a big one for me growing up, is experienced a lot of extreme financial stress. There was just stress in general. My mother, I believe, experienced depression. I don't think she was fully happy in the marriage. So there was a preoccupation. There were just a lot of children. There were six of us. I was a twin. There were four of us under the age of three at one point. So between the finances and the conflict issues, and that's another one. When is relationship conflict, that's another stress. When there is divorce, that is a stress. So all of that plays into an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. So if that resonates with any of you, if you have a parent who was ever hospitalized or institutionalized or just left suddenly or just denied your abuse and it never came out and it just was kind of hush hush and kept a secret. Meanwhile, you kept being abused all these years, or they just wouldn't believe you. So this creates that attachment style. Okay. That again tends to be the divine feminine, the clingy one, the one with when they talk about, I don't necessarily like to use these words, but let's just push pull, chase a runner. The divine feminine initially is chasing. There's that anxious preoccupation. Oh my God, I felt this. I don't want to lose this. I felt this like amazing full chakra unconditional love, and I don't want to lose this. So they chase and they go after it. And that is a push energy. And that comes from anxiety. And that comes from the fear of abandonment. I have to have this, expectations, attachment to the outcome. And that takes some healing to do. Like I said, I'll share how you can begin or continue to heal that. Okay, let's go to the next one, number 2, dismissive avoidant. You see the word dismissive and avoidant. So you already know, if you're a twin flame, this sounds like the divine masculine, quote unquote, the runner, because it typically is. You see, someone who has a dismissive avoidant attachment style is somebody who fears closeness, connection, intimacy, because to them it has equated with danger. There's potential harm there. They are invulnerable to feelings and emotions because it doesn't feel safe for them. It makes them feel uncomfortable. Anytime, they've become emotionally vulnerable, they've been met with disappointment and they've been shut down. And they haven't been able to rely on anybody. So it's typically a dismissive avoidant is uber independent, self-sufficient. In fact, they value their autonomy, their freedom, their space, because if they don't fend for themselves, who will? So they learn to depend on themselves and to keep others at a distance. In fact, they will tend to have many acquaintances, but very few close ties or connections, and that's about safety. Someone as well with a dismissive avoidant attachment style tends to have what are known as these energetic, towering, impenetrable walls. And again, that is for protection. These are those people who will shut down as soon as things get to, as soon as a connection deepens, they will shut down, they will run away, they won't talk about what they're truly feeling because it's not safe for them. And they would rather just avoid it altogether. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else that I did not. Okay. Oh, this is my observation. This is my belief, is that those who tend to have a dismissive avoidant attachment style tend to be falsely empowered. They still have that low self-esteem, that sense of unworthiness, not good enough. Yet because it's a mask and everything, and they're well away from the core of their power. It's the inflated ego where they literally see themselves as superior and better to everybody else, and they have a lower view of others. And they are very analytical, and they will intellectualize even emotions and feelings. Very left brain. And again, that is why it's typically the divine masculine. However, it's more than just that. It's the way that they were brought up, the way that they were not cared for or nurtured in the way that they needed. Very quickly, I mentioned that the anxious, preoccupied attachment style had a core fear of abandonment. With the dismissive, avoidant, the fear is fear of rejection. So they're not even going to go there. They're just going to avoid it altogether. And like I said, when things start to deepen, they're just going to shut it down and walk away to protect themselves, because their history has shown them if they start to express their feelings, if they start to become vulnerable, if they start to allow themselves to open up, they will be rejected. They will feel disappointment. They're going to suffer. They're going to deal with potential harm and pain. And they'd rather just avoid that. So they're more into the casual, short-term casual experiences. So what were their caregivers like? What did the growing up look like? Now, this was a little bit different. And when I think of dismissive avoidant, I think of neglect. Neglect. Literally had caregivers who just ignored them, dismissed them, neglected them. Where the dismissive avoidant attachment style, where this person had to fend for themselves. They wanted dinner, they were either going to grab their own dinner, go out and get it, or they were going to put it on the table. Maybe their parent was a drug addict. Maybe they were engaged in other activities and their focus just wasn't on the children. Maybe they had stress, or maybe they were just selfish and they were dealing with their own trauma. So they didn't have the ability to nurture and to attend and to comfort and to reassure their child in the way that a caregiver needs to do and should do. So big neglect. These are probably the children, or if this is you or was you or your divine counterpart, they probably kind of just, maybe they were even the ones who took care of their siblings. Maybe became the parent. They became the caregiver because their parent wasn't able to do that. Or maybe they wanted to express their emotions, or they might have physically got hurt, or emotionally they're experiencing something, but the parent was just too much in their own stuff to pay attention to the child. And so the child was taught, in fact, probably just to not express their emotions, because you know what? It didn't matter anyways. Nobody was going to listen. In other words, the parents dismissed them, ignored them. And the message that the dismissive avoidant gets is, I'm the only one. If I don't take care of myself, nobody else will. Nobody else will. So I need to really become successful. Whatever I do, I have to become super self-sufficient, uber independent, because I cannot rely on anybody. That's what they've been taught. And so that's what creates the dismissive avoidant attachment style. So if you have a divine counterpart who has blocked you, shut you down, walked away, that is due to trauma. And that is due to an insecure attachment style, due to childhood neglect and abuse. It's just a different way of being expressed. Fear of rejection versus fear of abandonment. So if you're a divine masculine or whether you're a divine feminine, hopefully this is helping you to better understand and to have more compassion, not only for yourself, yet for your divine counterpart. Now remember, because if they're blocking you physically, you're blocking them energetically, because you are trying to avoid pain as well. Okay. And maybe you're not at this point. Maybe you're not. I don't want to say that that's still your experience. Now let's go to the third insecure attachment style, known as fearful avoidant. disorganized. This is a mix of the first two. And because of it, it's completely chaotic. So it's literally anybody with this attachment style is bouncing back and forth between the two styles. This is the type of person that can have outbursts, rageful outbursts, anxious outbursts, and the next moment they're like calm and sweet as pie. So very inconsistent. Just like I said, very, very chaotic. So they desire that deep closeness, and yet when they start to get close, that's when they shut down as well. So what else do we have? This is very interesting. The person with this attachment style can experience overwhelming despair. And this is where self-destructive behaviors come in, dangerous behaviors. Okay, I know for me, this is why I feel like I also have some of this attachment style is because I would self-harm. I would bite myself, hit myself, pinch myself. Cutting wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I probably would have cut. I just put myself into dangerous situations. And even as I got older, I put myself into dangerous situations. Okay. So I would say I had a mix of that as well. So, let's see. I think that's what it is with this attachment style. Guess what? There's not only the fear of abandonment, there's also the fear of rejection. So they're dealing with both. So this is a really tough one. Like I said, I feel like if you're a twin flame, especially, you're going to probably identify predominantly with either anxious, preoccupied, or dismissive, avoidant. And then with that, you potentially could also have some of the style connected to fearful avoidant, which is a mixture of both, which tends to be complete chaos. And that seems to be a lot of twin flames, I'm just saying. And that comes about because caregivers were inconsistent. They might have been loving and nurturing one moment, and the next moment they were like completely frightening. Think of like an alcoholic dad or an alcoholic mother, sweet as pie when they're sober. Soon as they get too much to drink, completely switch up. They may become verbally, physically, emotionally abusive. That's an example of what can create that. Okay, so how do we heal this? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, inner child work is a big, big, big one. It's going back and processing what was not processed. In order for an event or series of event which became traumatic because of the painful emotions around it to be fully processed and integrated, you've got to be able to go back to the source to pinpoint the origin or the source of whatever is coming up for you and actually connect with that version of yourself and to reconnect, feel it in the body, bodily sensations, and then to express the emotion that became attached to that. That is about reconnecting to your body. So you see, it's where connection begins or reconnection begins is where the source of the pain has been trapped. So it's about healing, stabilizing, and regulating that nervous system. So that's why I feel like I call it inner child integration, is so important. Stay with me though, because I am going to address specifically those who have been involved in what I call any type of mind control. And MK Ultra mind control programming. I'm going to make sure I stay on here. Okay, so that's the father wound, the mother wound. It's reconnecting to yourself, to your body. I am really big on reconnecting to the body first, because what trauma does, it tends to dissociate you from your body. You end up all in your head, these perseverating thoughts, and you cannot force healing. You cannot force creation. You cannot force transformation, evolution, and growth with the mind. You need to go back in to the body. They need to come together and work as a team. So I'm big, 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 big on that. And it's being able to access your true self. Your true self is not being expressed if you still have unhealed trauma. You are not experiencing life as your true self. It's coming into acceptance of what happened to you. You don't need to get an apology. You don't need to be sorry. You don't need to ask for forgiveness. And you may not like this. You may not agree with it, but guess what? That means there's a right or a wrong, and this has ultimately been soul contracted. So part of taking back your power is recognizing that you don't need an apology. The key is acceptance of what happened and moving on and evolving and healing from it. Okay. Any somatic techniques that help to regulate the nervous system are beneficial. Okay. I have a lot of ancient sacred techniques, actually includes Pleiadian knowledge. I use a lot of Kundalini type of techniques that work with the Kundalini energy, because Kundalini energy is sexual energy, actually helps to transmute and helps one to heal and to spiritually ascend. It's a very, very powerful energy, and it is in fact connected to sacred sexuality. So that's why I'm healing the sexual trauma, right? Getting you to reclaim your power, having you come into the sacredness of your sexuality and learning how to access, direct, and channel your sexual energy. Big part of it. Okay. Getting the support of a relationship coach. I have a relationship coach. I am not specifically a certified relationship coach, yet I do have a lot of knowledge and wisdom around relationship and connection, and clearly just how we as humans connect in general. And of course, how to go about healing the wounds and the trauma that you may have potentially experienced. Okay. So essentially, you have an opportunity to rewrite, reprogram your relational blueprint. So, like I said, you can come into a healthier version of your ability to connect more deeply with intimacy and closeness and sustainability, and eventually with physical reunion with your divine counterpart, with the understanding that you will be continue to develop your secure attachment well when you come into physical reunion. Anything that you do now is a preparation, is a practice with others in your life. You will see that show up once you begin or continue to heal your insecure attachment style. Okay, so one more thing I'd like to share before I finish up. If you start to have memories come back related to Project Monarch, SSP, harmonics, MK Ultra programming, that's how I'm going to say it right now, then write it out. I think this is something I would probably do more like one-on-one coaching or in private, courses, because yeah, I think I'm just going to wait on that. There are specific techniques that I use to address that type of programming, because that can truly affect your ability to connect, to relate, to trust, to feel safe. And that's all very, very important. So on my own journey, my own path and how it's unfolded, I have learned very valuable techniques that I have done firsthand that I can then share with you. And I'm going to say, if you have been diagnosed with a mental health challenge, I like to call it a mental health challenge, such as DID, bipolar, schizophrenia, any of those, GAD, major depression, whatever. First of all, I'm just saying, it's all completely not just treatable, but healed. And it's likely connected to, and that's all I'm going to say. If you want to know more, you reach out to me directly, and I'll share that with you. Okay. And yeah, if you're a twin flame and you've dealt with an extreme amount of trauma, especially sexual trauma, and you are part of the first two waves of spiritual ascension, this could be you. Okay, so this is what I got for you right now. I have all these different courses brewing in my mind, and I'm really doing my best to figure out, okay, which ones am I really meant to offer and share right now. So for now, clearly, it's the one-on-one coaching. Okay. I'm accepting, as I said, 4 more clients. There's the active assistant one-off session. Okay. You can just check in with me and we can do a coaching call. And I call it an active assistant call because it's, we go in, I'll bring you right in for spontaneous healing and transformation. There's the free strategy call. Along with it, you receive a free informational video strategy call. Doesn't cost you anything. Grab that link there. And then, of course, check out the other offers that I have right now to see whether they resonate or not. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. If you feel like this information is helpful and beneficial and could be so for somebody else, why not share? Let's share with the collective conscious field. Love you so much. There it is. There it is from Fiercely Fulfilled Feminine Attachment Styles. Let's get your attachment styles to be more healthy starting today. Love you so much. Peace.